This is Unit 3, Week 3, question number 6. How did the U.S. acquire Texas? Long, complicated process. Texas was the northern frontier of Spain and then Mexico when they got their independence. Mexico was worried about this aggressive, manifest destiny-driven, land-hungry nation to the north of it called the United States. They knew Americans and folks were going to settle in their far frontiers, 2,000 miles from Mexico City, no matter what. So what they did, they encouraged settlement. They tried to have Americans come there and become Mexican. They gave huge land grants to empresarios, people who would then divvy up the land to more Americans coming in. They offered 23,000 acres of land for every 300 settlers that came in from the United States. So Stephen F. Austin set up a colony, the old 300. He brought these, and he encouraged Americans and promised them all this land if they would come and settle in Texas. Now, once they arrived there, they could have double the land if they, all they had to do was marry a Mexican and they would become Catholic. The problem is, just telling people to change their faith, marriage, whatever, doesn't mean that you're automatically going to culturally transition to, speaking Spanish and feeling Mexican, so to speak, that quickly. They also wanted to bring slaves because slavery and cotton farming were one of their goals to move from the South into Texas. That conflicted with the Mexican government, especially when they abolished slavery. These folks couldn't speak Spanish. They also wanted more support from the government. They'd gotten used to the national government of the U.S. providing roads, etc. So they sent a messenger, Stephen F. Austin, down to Mexico City to negotiate with the Mexican president, dictator, Santa Anna. And second time he went down there, instead of meeting with him, they threw him in jail instead. That didn't exactly build a lot of faith and trust with these new people from Mexico new people from the United States settling in Texas. So the Texans, the Tejanos, Hispanics living in Texas originally, the new immigrant settlers from the United States, many of whom owed money in the U.S. in banks. Banks in the southern United States would print GTT in their account booklets. Cannot collect, GTT, which stood for Gone to Texas. So lots of folks had poured into Texas, wanted the Mexican government to give them more support, protect them from Indians, help them build roads, etc. Instead, they threw in jail the leader of many of these newly settled Americans who were now Mexicans, supposedly. And word gets out that Santa Anna's not, and the Mexican government's not supporting the wishes of the people on the frontier, the people in Texas. And eventually, Santa Anna, the Mexican president himself, leads an army to put down and put these Texans in their place. They march all the way up in the first battle at San Antonio, the Battle of the Alamo. It's not really a battle, it's a slaughter. The Texans are defending the Alamo. They drew a line in the sand with their sword. Whatever, you can still go see the Alamo. There's a little metal bar there praising these Texans. They fought to the death to slow down Santa Anna's army so that a bunch of other Texans gathering elsewhere could unify and train in time to fight Santa Anna. So eventually, the Alamo becomes the rallying cry. Remember the Alamo, these people who fought to their death. Santa Anna goes on to fight the main Texas army under a man named Sam Houston. And at the Battle of San Jacinto, Texans make a huge deal out of this. I taught there for a year. I walked into my classroom. First thing I see on my wall, San Jacinto Monument. This giant preservation glorifying their defeat of Santa Anna. What's the real reason they defeated him? They sent him a woman of ill repute to distract him so he couldn't lead his troops properly. Anyways, the Texans defeat Santa Anna. They gain their independence from Mexico. Immediately they want to join the United States. The problem is they want to join as a slave state. So the U.S. says no, because that would have thrown off the balance of slave and free. They became an independent country for 10 years. Not because they wanted to be, but because the United States rejected them. Don't tell that to a proud Texan, though, who flies their flag. We were once an independent country because the U.S. rejected them. Anyways, 10 years later, the Republic of Texas is annexed, added on to the United States as a state when it gets a balancing number that'll allow it to come in and balance the slave and free states. So Texas gets its independence from Mexico because the folks there weren't very culturally Mexican, and then eventually joined the United States. Oddly enough, within 10 years, or 15 years, they're going to quit the United States again in the Civil War. Nothing irked Sam Houston more than to get their independence and join the country he wanted to be a part of, and then quit it right again. Anyways, that's it for this question. Although in the election of 1844, it's a big deal because President Polk wants to add Texas. And he's arguing that they need to add Texas or go to war to make sure they get it. Anyways, that's it from some guy in a low operating shirt.